Welcome to this steps method video about step 3 thinking ahead. Step 3 thinking ahead is about visualization, so having a clear image of the target position, being able to correctly assess the changed dynamics in the position after the moves that have been given, and then to calculate and evaluate candidate moves and variations. Today we're going to focus on defending, so protect, capture, move away, interpose and counterattack are the 5 ways that we identified before as ways of defending. And you will see that often we need creative solutions to get out of the attack by the opponent. And in general, of course, defending is very important because it trains us to focus on the opportunities of the opponent in the position. So let's see what's going on, right? White is to move, and white plays the move Queen G8. So we have to solve this for black. So we have to find a defense against Queen G8. And notice, right, that the A4 pawn has to go to A5. So you can see the green arrow. I included that. So because of the position of the king, she might think that the pawn is running down the board, but it's running up the board to A8. So how to defend against Queen G8, pinning the rook on E6 to the king on A2. And it's 2 times attacked by the king on D7 and the queen on G8. And if you want to make this an active session, pause the video, find the solution and then come back. So the solution is that we play Queen D1, and after King takes E6 we have the X-ray attack with Queen B3. So let me show you. Queen D1, King takes E6, Queen B3. Picking up the Queen, so the King cannot take there, the King has to move away, and then the danger is gone and we can unpin ourselves with Queen D5. Okay, Queen takes C6, Rook C8. Again we have a pin. The Rook on C8 is pinning the Queen on C6 to the square C1. And the problem is that the Queen on C6 cannot move away and at the same time defend the back rank successfully. What to do? So if you look at the letters, protect, capture, move away, interpose and counterattack, PC Mike, it feels that in this case we have to use a counterattack. And can you find the right counterattack? And notice that the move Rook takes A4 still doesn't work because of Rook takes E6, Rook takes A6, Rook C1, checkmate. So we need something else. And what we need is to move Bishop E2, an eye for an eye, a queen for a queen. So if the queen takes on E2, we take the rook on C8. And where can the queen move and at the same time defend the rook on C8? Right, and I think there's only one square, and it's A8. And then after we can trade the queens on A8 and the threat is gone. Also notice that after Bishop E2, after a rook takes C6, Bishop takes A6, Rook C1, we can interpose with Bishop F1. So Queen takes C6, Rook C8, Bishop E2, Rook takes C6, Bishop takes A6, Rook C1, and now we can interpose. So this was a combination of counterattack, Bishop E2, and interpose against a Rook C1. So we have knight E7, knight takes D5, what is going on? We have 3 attackers on the knight on e7. We again have a pin. The rook on e2 is rook on e1 is attacking the knight on e7, and we have a queen on h7 attacking the knight on e7, and the knight on d5 is attacking the knight on e7. So the immediate threat is rook takes e7 followed by mate. How to defend? Queen takes d5 would fail to queen takes e7 checkmate. So how to defend? So it helps if you are fully aware of the vulnerabilities on the white side. And one of the vulnerabilities that in this position white has is a vulnerable back rank. The king is on h1 and the pawns are on h2 and g1, so the rook cannot leave the back rank unless it is with a check. And this allows us to interpose with a surprising move. Did you find it? Bishop e2. Right? Because after rook takes e2, black mates. And of course it looks like a very scary defense, because you would say after knight e5, bishop e2, there is a check with the knight on f6. But in this position, white has no win. So this is an adequate defense. Okay, let's have a look here. Rook takes c2, queen d1. What is going on? So this is defending against a double attack. The queen on d1 is attacking the rook on c2 and is attacking the queen and the bishop on d8. How to defend? What would you do? And many players would just move their rook back to c8, right? So to use one of the targets to defend the other target. But why is rook c8 failing? Can you visualize why rook c8 is not sufficient? And then we find that after rook c8, white plays rook e1, pinning the queen on e5 to the e8 square, and white is winning. So rook takes c2, queen d1, double attack on the rook on c2 and the bishop on d8, and after rook c8, rook e1, pinning the queen on e5 to the square, e8 wins for white. So what do? Well, can we use the queen to defend both the bishop and the rook? Because then the threat of rook e1, right, that's also in the position, is being dealt with at the same time, right? So if you really think about it, after queen d1, there is not a double attack but a triple attack, which is rook e1, queen takes d8 and queen takes c2. And once you have considered that, you can find the solution. So here we were saying, right, after rook c8, there is the move rook e1, pinning the queen on e5. So it would be logical to use the queen, and after queen c7, black is safe. D takes e5, queen takes e5. White is the move. We have an even number of moves given. What are the threats? The threats are double attack, right? Queen takes b2 and queen takes e3. How to defend? Well, a pinned piece is a poor defender but also a poor attacker. So white can defend themselves by playing the move bishop f4, and after queen takes f4 we play queen takes e8. So Now the move bishop f4, pinning the queen on e5 to the king on b8, and after queen takes f4, we win the rook on e8. So sometimes, right, you come out ahead, and sometimes you defend to get an equal position in these exercises. So here we have queen d5 with a double attack on the rook on a8 and the bishop on d1. How to defend against that? Well, one of the ways to find a target was to do two moves with the same color and find a mate. So can you find for black a mate in two moves after queen d5 attacking the bishop and attacking the rook on a8? And you see that, of course, the king on f4 doesn't have a lot of squares. It has one escape square, e3. So it would be logical to take that escape square away. So we can play the move rook a3 with the double threat of rook takes f3 and g5 checkmate. So queen d5, and now rook a3 with the threat of rook takes f3 and the threat of g5. And black is winning. So we defend with a counterattack, and we use, because it's a counterattack, we need a target. In this case, the target is a mate, and we can find it by making two moves with the same color. And then we find rook a3, g5, or rook a3, followed by a rook takes f3. Bishop takes d5, queen d3. So white is to move. What is the double attack? The queen on d3 is attacking the bishop on d5 and the rook on b1. How can we defend against that? Can you find a solution? It's impossible for the bishop to defend the rook, and the rook cannot defend the bishop. So we have to set up a counterattack. And of course, what is clear is that both the bishop and the rook are on white squares, and so we can find a counterattack by playing here the move bishop e6, with the idea that after queen takes b1 we have bishop f5 check, and exchanging into a winning endgame. So let's have a look here. Queen c4, so the queen moves away. Queen b6, and this is very hard for a lot of players. So what is going on, right? We have a double attack. The queen attacks the king on g1 and the rook on b5, and the queen on b6 are having a twofold attack on the rook on b1. And it looks so strong that a lot of players would say, I don't have, there is no defense to it, right? There's nothing to do. I mean, I'm in check, so I have to cope with the check. But let's consider the material balance in the starting position. And we see that white is up a bishop, right? And if we look to the pawns, 7 against 6, so white is also up a pawn. And so the defense here, right, a lot of players would say that's very disappointing, but you have to make sure that rook takes b1, right, losing a full rook is no longer in the position. So the defense after queen b6 is to play the move bishop e3. And you can say, what kind of defense is that? But what we did is we saved our rook on b1, and we get into a position with equal chances. I mean, we are a pawn up, but it's not an important pawn. instead of that we are losing the game. Surprising defense. Okay, here we have knight takes c4, bishop a4. So what is going on? The bishop on a4 is attacking the rook on d1. The rook on c8 is attacking the knight on c4. So it would be very logical to play rook c1. The only thing is, it's like a self-pin, right? Because now the knight on c4 is pinned by the rook on c8. So the rook on c8 is pinning the knight on c4 to the rook on c1. And black can add an attacker with bishop b3. And wins a piece after all. So what to do? Right? This is not an easy one, but I think it's right. So knight takes c4, bishop a4. And then what we can do is we can play the move b3, right? Because after bishop takes, we play a rook b1, and now the bishop is lost because we created a pin ourselves, and we save a piece, basically, against losing a piece. So in this case, we're going now to defending against a threat. So we have rook takes c6, knight d4. So what is the threat of black after knight d4? So knight d4 threatens, of course, knight takes c6, but it also threatens to move knight e2. The king has to move, and we pick up the bishop on f4. So in this case, we can use our simple trick to say, can one of the targets defend the other target? And in this case, that it's true that the rook can defend the target, the bishop, by playing rook f6. And now, after knight e2, the king can move away. And the rook defends the bishop. So this is defending against a threat. Here we have rook takes b4, queen c3. So again, it's like the queen is attacking the rook on b4. And what is the other threat? The threat is queen c8 check, rook takes c8, rook c8 checkmate. Again, in this position, we can use our rule, can one of the targets help in protecting the other target? So can the rook on b4 defend against queen c8 checkmate to follow? And then you find a solution. The rook can go to e4, and after queen c8, the rook can go to e8 and interpose. So queen c3, double attack, and after this move, black can interpose and defend against the mate. So 2 times we could use one of the targets to defend the other target. Rook a8, king h7. What is the threat by black in that position? Right, the threat is rook e1 checkmate. How to defend against rook e1? Can you find it? Rook a8 check, king h7. How to defend against the threat of rook e1 checkmate? And the solution is rook e8, right? So it's like an X-ray defense of the square e1, and it's possible because the queen, of course, is defending the rook, and now white is safe. Here we have a rook takes c3, queen takes b2. What is going on? Right? Rook takes c3, queen takes b2. So the queens are staring at each other. The queen on b2 and the queen on e2. But if white would play queen takes b2, there is rook d1 checkmate. So there is a weakness on the back rank. So what do we do? Right, there is the threat of queen takes c3, there's the threat of queen takes e2, and white has a back rank weakness, because if we would play rook c2 and use one of the targets to defend the other, black would continue with queen b1, and after queen f1 would pick up the rook on c2. How to defend against rook takes c3, queen takes b2? The solution is rook c8 check, rook takes c8, queen b2, and now the queen on b2 is defending c1, so the rook cannot come down and deliver mate on the back rank. Oops. One too short. And the queen takes b2. Bishop takes d8, queen g7. What is going on? Right? If white exchanges the queens, the bishop on g8 is trapped. Right? And then the second thing, after queen g7, if we would play something like rook takes h6, the king can move away by taking the bishop on g8. So is there any way we can save our bishop on g8? Bishop takes g8, queen g7. The queens are looking at each other. If we take the queen, then king takes g7 and the bishop is lost. And if we take on h6, the king takes on g8 and our bishop is also lost. So how to save the bishop? White can save the bishop by playing the move bishop h7. And after queen takes h7, we have rook h6 pinning the queen to the king on h8. And actually in that position, the move rook takes h6 is a major threat to begin with. So we have bishop takes queen g7, bishop h7. Right, and as I was saying, if the queen would take here, we would take on h6 and pin the queen to the king on h8. Knight takes b3, rook b2. What is going on? It looks like the knight is trapped on b3. It has no safe squares to go to. But there's also one thing going on, and that is that the rook on a3 and b2 are both undefended, and the bishop on e3 is undefended. So we have three undefended white pieces. And is there anything that we can do by using that vulnerability? So we have two attackers on the knight on b3, no safe squares to go to, but we have three undefended pieces on the white side. How can black save themselves? And the answer is by using an intermediate move and the fact that the rook is undefended by playing knight b3, rook b2, and now the move knight d4, not safe, but the rook on b2 is hanging, so white first has to attend to the undefended rook, and if the rook takes, we have the intermediate move, and then we can take back the rook and we saved the knight. So this is the last one. I think it's pretty beautiful. This is defending and refuting. So we saw defending against the pin. We saw defending against double attack, threat and defense, and this is defending and refuting. So there's bishop takes c6. So what is the threat after bishop takes c6? The threat is mate in 1, all right, with bishop e8. Black has an advanced pawn, so black is about to play a1 queen. But mate comes first. So how to defend against that mate? And so a logical continuation probably would be to say, I'm going to play a move and that gives me the square g5 for my king. So like a move like bishop d2, right? Because then after bishop e8 check, king g5, h4, the king can take on f5 and black save themselves, and on the next move black can promote their pawn a2, a1 queen. But what would white do after bishop takes c6, bishop d2? White would bring back the mating threat by playing the move h4. And now the king has nowhere to go, the king on h5, and cannot prevent the mate bishop e8. But by looking at this threat of white, the threat of h4 after the move bishop d2, we found a way, we found, let's say, a hint for ourselves to solve this exercise, right? So we can prevent the move h4 by playing bishop h4 ourselves. So bishop takes h6, bishop h4, right? So now if the pawn takes, then black is safe. So what will white do? Well, white has one more option, and that is to say, I'm going to cover the square g5 with my king. So white could play king f4. How would you defend against bishop takes c6, bishop h4, king f4 in this position? Yes, so black has no other option than to play bishop g5 back, and after king f3 it would be a repetition of moves, and the players would ultimately agree to a draw. White cannot afford the pawn to be promoted and be a queen down, and black has to make sure that they don't get mated. Thank you very much. I hope this was a useful video for you. Step 3, thinking ahead. Very interesting exercises and definitely not easy. Thank you for watching.